All right, so what I want to do here is make a very, very basic video about playing chords. Chords are, simply put, just notes that go together and create a kind of harmony. They're built off of triads, which means 3 notes. And essentially, like, you have the root of the chord, and then you have the quality of the chord. So this chord, you might recognize it as C. Now, when it says C, it really means C major, but we don't talk about it being major. We just say C. But C is the tonal center. That's what the chord is based off of. It's based off of C. Major is the tonal quality. So for instance, this chord right here is a D. D is the tonal center, and major is the tonal quality. If we switch that around a little bit, we make a D minor. In this case, the tonal center is still D, but the tonal quality is minor. Okay, so that's just something really quick about what those things mean. Now let's talk about playing chords. You can play some very basic chords right off the bat. The very first one that I would recommend anyone play is G, but a very basic G. Normally we see G and it looks like this. Okay? That's a little bit difficult for someone just starting out, or maybe someone that really can't reach the frets the right way and they can't fret the chord completely. But you want to get playing as soon as possible. So a version of G that you can play is right here. And that is a legit G chord. You have G, B, and another G. All you need is 2 distinct notes. Now, you might notice on guitar, a lot of these notes repeat. It doesn't matter how many times you have each note, as long as you have generally the notes that make up the chord. Usually, there are a couple notes you need. We can talk about that another time. But this G chord is actually really super easy. You'd use your ring finger, and you would play up at the 3rd fret. Let me get a little closer to the other camera. You get basically up to the 3rd fret with your ring finger. You hold that down as close to the fret up here as you can, and you play only the top 3 strings. This is what it looks like on the other side. You play them at the same time. By top 3, of course, I mean the 1, 2, and 3. The E string, the B string, and the G string. That's what I mean by the top 3 strings. They're the highest ones, so call them the top, even though they're closer to the floor. Just the way I put it. Whatever works for you. Really doesn't matter as long as it works for you. But again, universally, this is the 1st string, 2nd string, and 2nd string, and 3rd string. So when we're holding notes down, we want to try our best to hold the note right in front of the fret, okay? What that means is that you play the note right before the fret, okay? So as you're going up, you stop before what is known as the 3rd fret. You don't play on top of it. This is what it sounds like when you do that. Yep. And when you go past it, it's not the same note. So you have to go just below it. All right, so here's your G chord. That's a very, very easy G chord to play. Let me move this around just a little bit because I seem to be leaning towards that side, and I really don't feel like editing this too much at all, honestly. Very good. So now, let's play another chord. We have the C chord. Okay, it's kind of hard to see from my hand, but if you look here, I'm putting the pointer finger on the 1st fret on the 2nd string. Very good. Now I'm still only playing the top 3 strings. The one thing you're going to have to look out for with this one, and this really is a good principle when we're talking about playing chords, is that we need to consider a few things. Number 1, we already just discussed how you have to hold down, as best you can, right before the fret, okay? There's a couple other things to keep in mind, though. Number 1, if you look at my thumb, there is no hard and fast rule this way. However, you almost want it so that your thumb and the fingers or finger that you're fretting with are like pinching each other, like this. If you look, in a way, right? So you keep your thumb on the back of the neck and you almost apply pressure to it according to the pressure that you're putting on your like pointer finger in this case. It helps a lot with like stability and anchoring. So we want to make sure the thumb is on the back of the neck. Sometimes it should go like straight up like this. Sometimes it needs to go like this. With everything with guitar, make sure you're being flexible with your body. It's not about one particular way. Everyone's body is different. So whatever works for you. I would say the one thing to avoid is holding the guitar like this or holding the guitar like this. People want to do that because they want to see. I get it. Maybe at first, like to learn, but you're going to have to get away from that habit. So there's your C chord. There's one thing you might run into here, and I think this is really the last thing with chords. This pointer finger can't be touching anything else except for the fret that it's on. So if you look, let's see, my pointer finger is coming down like a hammer on that string right here. Okay, it's not laying this way, and it's not going too far this way. Okay, it's right here if the camera is focusing right anyway. All right, so we want it to come straight down where possible. There are instances where this isn't the case, like playing like the F chord as a bar. And hold on a second. All right, the camera is in use and it's still working. Good, that was weird. Okay, so you don't want it laying down like this, and you don't want it going too much forward. Now we're gonna use those things. If we look at the finger, and my finger is probably kind of dirty, okay? You have like the bottom of the finger. Let me get it in focus. Doesn't really matter that much. I don't think you want to see my finger anyway. You have the bottom of the finger that goes up and around up to the nail, okay? We want to be really conscious of where the string is touching our finger, okay? Because in this example, the back of the finger might be laying on the string that it's not supposed to, and that would result in this. And that doesn't sound like the chord at all. At the same time, if it goes too far this way, it might mute the other string. So we want to make sure it's only touching this string by trying to come straight down like a hammer. I say to kids, like, don't let it lay down like a piece of pizza. Have it like come down on a hammer. Think about a hammer hitting a nail. If you try and hit hit a nail sideways, you're not gonna have a good time. The nail's gonna bend, you're not gonna get the right angle. You wanna come straight up and down as much as possible. Obviously, you're never gonna get it straight up and down, like in some perfect sense. Those are the three things to look out for. We have to make sure we're pressing up close to the fret, and we have to make sure that our thumb is like pinching the neck a little bit. Don't put too much pressure on it. Don't kill yourself. And we also have to make sure that this finger is not getting in the way of any other strings, you know, at least unintentionally. Later on, there might be a reason to do that. Let's look at another chord that's also really easy, and it's E and E minor. So E major and E minor. Now, it's pretty interesting because this, let's see if I can, no, okay. This is E major, and this is E minor. Now, I told you before that G was the easiest one. E minor actually is. But there's one really, really, really important thing here, and I think you could probably see it from what I'm showing you right now. This is the one note that determines whether or not E is going to come out major or minor. So if you can't hear this note for some reason, it's going to sound the same, right? So I'm going to like have the finger in position, but not do anything with it, okay? I'm going to go, this is E major, and this is E minor, okay? They sound exactly the same unless you put this in. Let's play it again. E major, then E minor. They're two very different chords, okay? Just with a difference of one note. And it would make a big difference in a song if you played the wrong one. So, very good. So let's look at E real quick. E is your pointer finger on the first fret on the third string. That's simple. We have to make sure that our finger is not touching any of these strings over here. It can touch these strings in some way if you want. Like, it might even be good to like block the next string over if you want, like on purpose. So you're purposely messing it up so you can't really hear it in case you accidentally strum it. Okay, E minor, very easy. Just the top three strings open. Okay, so these are some very, very basic chords. Now, that doesn't really give us anything I think we can really use for a full chord progression. That's when we start getting into more complex chords. Also, these basic chords have a couple of big flaws. Whenever you have a chord, it's a good idea and good practice, I mean, generally, as like a rule type of thing. And of course, like, the rules aren't ultimately that important if you know what you're doing and you know what sound you're looking for. But the one big flaw that these simple chords have is they have no root at the bottom of the chord sometimes. The G does. The G definitely does, because it has, in this case, it has G, B, and then this is a G right here. So in that case, oh, sorry, we have a G. Very good. The other chords, however, do not. This E major has G sharp as the first note. So in reality, it's not really a simple E major chord. In this case, it would be an E major first inversion, which is theory that we don't have to worry about right now. You can pass it for an E chord, especially if there's like a bassist in the background. Then it makes sense. Same thing with E minor. E minor, G is at the bottom of the chord. That's another first inversion. It's not an actual E minor chord in like the standard sense. I mean, composers use that and musicians use it, but we want to be sure we know what we're doing. Also, the C chord, same exact thing. The G is in the bottom. In this case, it's a second inversion, but again, not something we have to worry about. So that's where the more standard chords come in, and they're much harder, obviously. And of course, chords get harder and harder to play. Let's review, let's see, maybe 5 or 6 chords, and then we're going to talk about switching, and then that'll be it. Okay, so let's take a look again at the C chord. Okay, so actually, let's look at the G chord, because we were doing that before. G now looks like this, okay? I'm going to give you a hint with G, and that's going to help you switch chords later, in my opinion. Obviously, everybody is different. When you play just about any chord, there's a couple things that you can look at. You can look at anchors, and you can look at leading fingers, okay? So an anchor is a note that exists between 2 chords, so that's more for switching. However, the lead fingers are actually pretty important, in my opinion. Your hand, okay? Basically, we're not designed to have, like, independent fingers. We're really not. We're designed literally to go like this, all at the same time. If the fingers were super independent and we didn't get the grip soon enough, we would, like, miss a tree branch or not be able to grab something or someone. So our needs were very different back then. So basically, now when we're trying to do more complicated stuff with our fingers, it's very difficult for us to separate one finger from the other. But you can exploit that, okay? So if you try and play a G chord and you start up here, you're like over here, right? And then you go over here. You notice how the whole hand moved, right? And then you go over here, the hand moves even further. Okay, and sometimes it can create difficulties with other fingers because they get a little bit out of whack, right? What I say is try and move to the furthest fret from your position first, okay? So you're over here with the G chord, and your middle finger really has to go the furthest down to this note right here. So that's what I would suggest going with right off the bat. Go with the one that's the furthest and make it the lead finger, okay? So here we go. G chord, we go like this, and now our other fingers are almost ready just to come down and support the chord. So I would lead like this, all right? Now, that's not the only way to do it, but I just think it's a great way to start looking at strategies on how to change chords. But we have to start with how to basically fret them in the first place. Let's look at the G chord in a little bit more detail. The ring finger is the same thing as the simplified G chord. It's right here. Some people will also use the pinky for this one, which is acceptable depending on what you're doing. For instance, if you play a G chord with the pinky, you can go like this. Okay? If you play a G chord. I'm sorry, that was with the ring finger. My bad. Also, if you play with the pinky, though, so there are advantages to both. Right now, let's just focus on using the ring finger on that one right there, because it gives us an idea. It just gives us a general thing of what we need to do, okay? So you have your finger here, you have a finger here, and you have a finger here. But of course, we're going to do it with leading fingers. We're going to go first to the 3rd fret on the 6th string, okay? And then these 2 fingers, we're going to do the next one that's furthest, if you think about it, which is the pointer finger on the 2nd fret on the 5th string. And then the ring finger just kind of falls into place back where it belongs. There's your G chord. Now, there's a couple things that are important here. This finger can get in the way of what this finger is doing. Like if you lay this finger down, wait, hold on. Okay, good. If you lay this finger down, it will get in the way of this string. I'll show you an example. Okay, so we have to watch out for that. We also have to watch out that this finger doesn't get in the way of this open string. Right? That's good. The 2 middle ones are the easiest. If you don't play the chord that great, you're going to hear those come out for sure. And actually, that does make up a G chord. It's a G and a D, but it's a little bit undefined. Unless you play the B string, which makes it a full G chord, but the D again is on the bottom. Okay, we don't want the D on the bottom. So after that, we have the ring finger here, and we don't want it going too forward. Okay, we want this to stay up here. We don't want it to encroach on the next string over. And this string is very important because if this note doesn't come through, this one does, or this one will usually come through as well. And that's a very important note in the chord. That is actually a note that will define whether or not it's major or minor, just like the E chord we played before. So it's very important that the 2nd string really rings out. So make sure your ring finger doesn't get in the way of that. Very good. So again, to make it really, really simple, this is a G chord. You start with your middle finger going to the 3rd fret on the 6th string, then your pointer finger on the 2nd fret on the 5th string, and then your ring finger on the 3rd fret on the 1st string. Good. With all these chords, try and test them one by one. Make sure they're all ringing out clear. I'll purposely make an error. That one has a problem, so I'm gonna fix this finger and play it again. Obviously, it's gonna take you a little bit longer, but that's the general gist of it. Now, the C chord. With this one, we have a similar situation where we need to have like a leading finger, okay? In the C chord, I believe that the ring finger has to go the furthest in this example. So you put the ring finger on first, then your middle finger follows, and then your pointer finger. Let's look at where these fingers are going. We have the 3rd fret on the 5th string, we have the 2nd fret on the 4th string, and we have the 1st fret on the 2nd string, okay? And if we play this chord, we don't play the thickest string. We don't play this string. And we can achieve that in 2 ways. This is actually where the idea of our fingers getting in the way on purpose comes into play. So if we play the C chord with the low note, it is technically in the chord. So you're actually going to see books telling you that you can play this string. Don't. Just don't. Don't. It gets in the way of the chord. Also, it puts an E on the bottom, and this is a C chord. So we don't want that, okay? There's 2 ways to avoid that. You can aim, and again, you're actually playing down here, but I'm trying to show you up here. You can aim for the 5th string and play up. But if you're strumming, every now and then you're going to get that low string. So this is what I recommend. When you play the C chord, let your ring finger kind of touch. You see that? It's like kind of touching the low E string. And you won't hear it no matter how you strum. If I let go, then it's a problem. All right, cool. So that's a C chord right there. We want to make sure everything comes through. We're going to have a problem with this finger and this finger. We want to make sure that this finger is not laying down, but popped up. This one too, it'll get in the way of the G string. We want it popped up. And then this one as well. So C chord is a little bit harder to play for sure, because you have a bunch of possibilities that could go wrong as far as blocking. And then you want to try and block this one. A little more complicated. Now, before we move on to other chords, one really important switch is from C to G and back and forth and so on and so on. You'll see people switching these chords a lot. Okay, let's talk a little bit about switching. Number one rule about switching: do not launch your fingers into orbit when you switch chords. Even when you play them normally, when you're practicing, don't go like this. Don't go and just like, your hand is, all in the middle of nowhere. You want to do the least amount of vertical or, vertical or upwards movement that you can, okay? So basically, if you notice, my fingers are getting off the strings, but just barely. Let me see if I can give you a side view. I'd have to give it to you from the other angle. Maybe upside down I can do it. So basically what we see here, very little movement. I didn't even do it the right way because it was awkward, but very little movement. And you might notice how I'm changing the chords here. You see I'm using the leading fingers, and yeah, my thumb is over here, just ignore it. You're not allowed to do that. And the leading fingers are the ones going in first. Those are the ones I'm focusing on too. Focus on those fingers as the leaders, even if it doesn't look like they're actually going first. Focus on them. So when you switch to C from G, use your ring finger, and it just pushes your other fingers back. Just by nature, we want to exploit nature. We don't want to fight it too much. We want to exploit what's already there and work around it. So we have our G chord, and then we push our ring finger forward to make the C chord, and they all fall in place. I'll do it in slow motion, and I'll do it like step by step. You have the middle finger go forward to the 3rd fret on the 6th string, and you notice the pointer finger is going to the 2nd fret on the 5th string, and your ring finger is landing on the 3rd fret on the 1st string. And now when we switch to C, the ring finger moves forward, and you notice like it just moves those other two back, and it reaches the 3rd fret on the 5th string. Then your middle finger lands on the 2nd fret on the 4th string, and your pointer finger lands on the 1st fret on the 2nd string. Okay, so I'll do it again. Good. Let's talk about a difficult chord to play, which is D. Now, I only technically have like 4 minutes left in the video, so I'm going to do the best I can to get 3 more chords in and some switching that's important. The D chord looks like this. It's a very difficult chord at first, and you can only play these 4 strings, the top 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This note is very important because it's a D. So the D, like I said, you want the D on the bottom. You want the D in the bottom of the chord. Strong. To make this chord, I would lead with your ring finger on the 3rd fret on the 2nd string, and don't do this actually. Lead with your 3rd finger, and your other 2 fingers, your pointer finger and your middle finger, should come right down on the 2nd fret both, on the respectively the 1st string and the 3rd string. Okay? So we do this, and then this. That's what we want. Good. Now, let's say, also you have a lot of problems here. You don't want this one touching this open string. You don't want your pointer finger touching the open string. You don't want your ring finger touching 2 different strings. You don't want it touching the 1st string or the 3rd string. So you have to watch out in both directions. And then this one right here, Should be an easy one to get to. It's just a little funky to fret that note. Okay, good. Now, if we're switching to G, middle finger. Go out there, switch to G. Back to D, ring finger just sneaks in over there, and we make the D chord. C, we forward with the ring finger, and then we get those in there. Back to G, middle finger, right? G to D, this goes here, that goes there. C, back to D. You'll notice I'm using the lead fingers. So far we have the ring finger to get to C, the middle finger to get to G, and the ring finger again to get to D. Focus on those fingers, all right? Now we're going to talk about anchoring and multiple different ways of switching chords. Two very easy chords. The easiest full chord, I think, is E minor. You don't have to play E minor just one way, though. Here's one way of doing it. You have your middle finger and your pointer finger, both on the 2nd fret, on the 4th and 5th strings, respectively. Very good. So when you have them here, you have to watch out again for some collisions on either side. You need this note to come out. Absolutely need this note to come out. And definitely need this note to come out. So these fingers can only be on the strings they're on. They probably won't get in the way of each other. One thing you'll notice is that these notes are not perfectly behind the fret. Don't worry about that so much. There's not so much you can do about that. Now there's two ways to do this. We have an anchor finger when we go to the C chord, and that's your middle finger right here. So when we go to the C chord from here, we kick out our ring finger first, and then we get our pointer finger into place on the 1st fret on the 2nd string. You'll notice that the middle finger did not move at all. It anchors it. It actually makes it much easier to switch too. But now, what if we fret E minor in a different way? What if we use the middle finger and the ring finger? It's still valid, very much valid, just because it doesn't fit another way of playing it. But now we can use this to go to A minor very easily by just moving everything up 1 fret and then putting down the first your pointer finger on the 1st fret on the 2nd string. Let's look at a couple of changes there, and then we'll be done. We have E minor to C, and then to G, and then to D, and then to A minor, and then to E minor. Okay? It's not really a valid chord progression, but I'm going to do it one more time in slow motion, and then we're done here. E minor with the pointer and middle. Then we do it in slow motion to C. Then slow motion to D. And then slow motion to G. And then A minor and E minor.